The old Coolsville Public Library stood like a silent giant against the stormy night sky, its Gothic windows flickering with an eerie green light that shouldn't exist in an abandoned building. Thunder cracked overhead as the mystery machine pulled up to the curb, its headlights cutting through sheets of rain that hammered the cracked pavement. Inside the van, Daphne Blake pressed her face against the window, her violet eyes wide with excitement rather than fear. "There it is, gang. The Holloway Memorial Library," she announced, pointing at the imposing stone structure. "According to the research I did, this place was built by millionaire philanthropist Augustus Holloway in 1892. He made his fortune in railroad investments and believed knowledge was the greatest wealth anyone could accumulate." Velma Dinkley adjusted her orange turtleneck and pushed her thick glasses up her nose, peering at her tablet screen. "That's fascinating, Daphne. But what's even more interesting is that Holloway supposedly hid something incredibly valuable inside before his death, something he called the secret to infinite wealth. And now, according to multiple reports over the past 3 weeks, a ghostly figure has been scaring away anyone who tries to enter." "Zoinks!" Shaggy Rogers yelped from the driver's seat, his knees knocking together. "Like, did you say ghostly figure? As in, a real ghost? Roast?" Scooby-Doo whimpered beside him, his ears flattening against his head. Fred Jones, sitting in the passenger seat with his signature ascot perfectly tied, turned to face the group with determination in his blue eyes. "According to the librarian who called us, Miss Thornbury, the ghost appears every night at exactly midnight. It's described as a translucent figure carrying ancient ledgers and muttering about investments and compound interest. Several treasure hunters have tried to find Holloway's secret wealth, but they've all run away screaming." Daphne pulled out a small notebook, flipping through pages covered in her neat handwriting. "I've been studying Augustus Holloway's philosophy. He wasn't just rich, he was smart about money. He always said, 'Save $1 before you spend a dime. Invest in knowledge before you invest in gold. And never trust a deal that sounds too good to be true.' If his secret is hidden here, it's probably not just about money. It's about understanding how wealth really works." The wind howled, causing the library's iron gates to creak ominously. A flash of lightning illuminated a shadowy figure passing by one of the third-floor windows, carrying what appeared to be glowing books. "Jinkies!" Velma gasped. "Did everyone see that?" "Rah-oh!" Scooby dove under a blanket in the back of the van. Shaggy joined him. "Like, maybe we can investigate this mystery from right here? Nice and safe in the mystery machine? With snacks?" Fred shook his head with a smile. "Come on, gang. We've solved hundreds of mysteries. What's one more ghost?" He grabbed his flashlight and opened the van door. "Besides, if there really is some kind of financial wisdom hidden in there, think of all the people we could help by uncovering it and sharing it with the world." Daphne was already out of the van, rain droplets glistening on her purple dress as she approached the gates. There was something in her expression, a fierce curiosity mixed with determination, that suggested this mystery meant more to her than the others realized. "Daphne's right to be excited," Velma said, stepping out with her flashlight. "Financial literacy is one of the most important life skills, and it's rarely taught properly. If Holloway really did hide some kind of wealth-building secret, this could be educational gold." As the gang gathered at the imposing front entrance, the smell of old paper, leather bindings, and damp stone wafted through the cracked doors. The brass door handles were tarnished with age, and cobwebs stretched across the doorframe like nature's warning tape. Shaggy pulled out a half-eaten sandwich from his jacket pocket. "Before we go in there, I should probably finish this. For energy. And maybe we should stop at the store for more snacks. That's a good use of money, right?" "Actually, Shaggy," Velma chimed in, "that brings up an important economic concept: opportunity cost. Every dollar you spend on snacks is a dollar you can't spend or save for something else. The question is always, what's the best use of this money right now?" The best use is definitely snacks, Velma. Shaggy replied matter-of-factly. Rhea, racks. Scooby agreed, his tail wagging slightly despite his fear. Fred pushed open the heavy wooden doors, which groaned like they hadn't been opened in decades. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing rows upon rows of towering bookshelves, disappearing into shadow. Dust particles danced in the light like tiny spirits, and somewhere deep within the building, they could hear the distinct sound of footsteps echoing on marble floors. "Well, gang," Fred announced, his voice steady despite the ominous atmosphere. "Looks like we've got another mystery on our hands. And this time, we might just learn something that could change our lives forever." As they stepped across the threshold into the haunted library, none of them noticed a shadowy figure watching from the third floor, its eyes glowing an unnatural green as it clutched a leather-bound ledger to its chest. The figure whispered something that was lost in the storm. "They're here for my secret, but they'll never understand the true cost." The interior of the Holloway Memorial Library was even more magnificent than Daphne had imagined. Her flashlight beam swept across walls lined with dark oak bookshelves that stretched 3 stories high, connected by ornate spiral staircases and wrought iron walkways. Crystal chandeliers, now dark and draped in cobwebs, hung from the vaulted ceiling like frozen waterfalls. The air smelled of aged paper, leather, and something else, a faint metallic scent that Velma immediately noted as unusual. "Wow," Daphne breathed, slowly spinning in a circle to take in the grandeur. This place must have cost a fortune to build. Holloway really believed in investing in community resources. Indeed he did, came a trembling voice from behind a large circulation desk. An elderly woman emerged, wearing a cardigan covered in cat hair and thick bifocals that magnified her worried eyes. "I'm Miss Thornbury, the head librarian. Thank goodness you're here, Mystery Inc. I didn't know who else to call." Fred approached her with an extended hand. "Nice to meet you, Miss Thornbury. Can you tell us exactly what's been happening?" The librarian wrung her hands nervously. "It started 3 weeks ago, right after we announced plans to finally renovate this old building and reopen it to the public. The city approved a budget of $500,000 for the restoration. That very night, the ghost appeared. Now, no construction workers will come near the place. We're losing $2,000 every day in contractor fees and delayed schedules. The mayor is threatening to cancel the whole project and tear the building down instead." "Tear it down?" Daphne's voice rose with distress. "But this library is a historical treasure. It's irreplaceable." Velma was already taking notes on her tablet. "Miss Thornbury, you mentioned the ghost appears at midnight. What exactly does it do?" "It floats through the aisles carrying old accounting ledgers and financial records. It moans about protecting the investment and the compound interest of knowledge. Several treasure hunters have broken in looking for Holloway's supposed hidden fortune, but they all run away screaming. One man swore the ghost threw gold coins at him, but when he looked back, they'd vanished." "Gold coins?" Shaggy's eyes lit up. "Like, maybe this ghost is actually pretty cool? Rolled Royals?" Scooby perked up, his tail wagging. "Don't get excited, you two," Velma warned. "Ghosts don't carry real gold. There has to be a logical explanation." Miss Thornbury led them deeper into the library, past rows of books on economics, finance, and business. Daphne paused to examine a glass display case containing what appeared to be Augustus Holloway's personal effects: a leather journal, an antique pocket watch, a pair of spectacles, and a faded photograph of a distinguished man with a gray beard and kind eyes. "That's him," Miss Thornbury said softly. "Augustus Holloway. He grew up poor son of a factory worker. But he educated himself, saved every penny, invested wisely in the railroad boom, and became one of Coolsville's wealthiest citizens. Unlike most rich men of his time, he gave most of it away. He built this library, funded schools, and helped dozens of families start businesses with small loans he never expected to be repaid. Daphne pressed her hand against the glass, studying Holloway's face. He understood something important. Wealth isn't just about having money. It is about what you do with it and how you help others. Exactly, Miss Thornberry agreed. And that's why the legend of his hidden treasure has always fascinated people. Before he died in 1920, he told the newspapers that he'd hidden the secret to infinite wealth somewhere in this library. He said, "Not all treasures are made of gold, and the richest person isn't the one with the most money, but the one with the most wisdom." People have been searching ever since. Fred examined a floor plan of the library that hung on the wall. This place is huge. 4 floors, dozens of rooms, and according to this, there's even a basement vault where rare books were stored. The vault! Miss Thornberry gasped. I'd forgotten about that. It's been sealed for decades. The key was lost years ago. Or maybe someone doesn't want it found, Velma suggested, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. A sudden crash echoed from the second floor, followed by the sound of books tumbling from shelves. Everyone jumped except Velma, who immediately started analyzing the acoustics. Based on the echo pattern that came from the economics section on the second floor, approximately 40 feet northeast of our current position. Like, how about we don't go check it out? Shaggy suggested, backing toward the exit. We could, call it a night and come back when it's daytime and less haunted? No way, Shaggy, Fred said firmly. We need to investigate while the trail is fresh. Miss Thornberry, is there anyone else who might have access to this building? The librarian thought for a moment. Well, there's Cornelius Blackwood, a wealthy businessman who's been trying to buy this property for years. He wants to demolish it and build luxury condos. He's offered up to $2 million, but the city won't sell because of the building's historical significance. Then, there's Dr. Patricia Montgomery, an economics professor at Coolsville University who's written several books about Holloway. She's been petitioning for access to his private papers for research. And there's also Jack Lucky Morrison, a local construction contractor who submitted a bid for the renovation work, but his bid was $200,000 higher than the company that got the job. Interesting, Velma mused. So we have 3 potential suspects, each with a financial motive. Blackwood wants the property, Montgomery wants the historical documents, and Morrison lost money when his bid was rejected. Another crash resonated through the library, this time closer. The distinct sound of footsteps echoed on the marble floors above them, slow, deliberate footsteps that seemed to be coming closer to the spiral staircase. Roast. Scooby yelped, diving behind Shaggy. Zoinks, like maybe it's time for a strategic retreat to the snack bar? But before anyone could move, a glowing green figure materialized at the top of the staircase. It was translucent, wearing old-fashioned clothing from the 1890s, and carrying a large leather-bound ledger that seemed to glow from within. The ghost's face was gaunt and pale, with hollow eyes that burned with an eerie light. Leave this place, the ghost moaned in a deep, echoing voice. The treasure is protected. Those who seek wealth without wisdom shall find only ruin. The ghost raised one spectral hand, and suddenly, gold coins began materializing in the air around it, spinning and glittering before shooting through the library like bullets. Everyone ducked as the coins whooshed overhead, embedding themselves in bookshelves and wooden pillars with solid thunks. Those are real, Fred shouted in surprise. Or at least solid enough to be dangerous. Daphne noticed something crucial. When the coins hit the walls, they didn't vanish like illusions. They remained embedded in the wood, glinting in the flashlight beams. The ghost floated down the staircase, still moaning about investments and compound interest. Miss Thornberry shrieked and ran for the exit, her footsteps echoing away into the storm outside. Gang, split up, Fred commanded. Velma and I will try to track where the ghost goes. Daphne, you investigate that display case and Holloway's personal effects. There might be clues there. Shaggy and Scooby, You two check out the reading rooms and see if you can find any signs of how someone might be sneaking in and out of here. Like, why do we always get the scary job? Shaggy complained. Because you two are good at accidentally stumbling onto important clues, Daphne said with an encouraging smile. Just be careful, okay? As the gang split up, Daphne returned to the display case containing Holloway's belongings. She examined it carefully with her flashlight, looking for any hidden compartments or clues. The journal inside was open to a page that read, September 15th, 1919. Today, I met with young Thomas regarding his request for a business loan. He wanted $500 to start a pharmacy, but admitted he had spent his savings on a guaranteed investment opportunity that turned out to be a fraud. I gave him the loan anyway, but first, I taught him the 3 rules I wish someone had taught me when I was young. 1. Save before you spend. Always pay yourself first, too. Invest in what you understand. Never trust a deal too good to be true. 3. Compound your knowledge. The more you learn, the more you earn. Daphne felt a chill run down her spine, not from fear, but from recognition. These weren't just old-fashioned advice. These were timeless principles that people still struggled with today. How many people did she know who spent every paycheck without saving? How many fell for scams because something sounded too good to be true? How many never invested in their own education and growth? The secret to infinite wealth, she whispered to herself. Maybe it's not about finding hidden gold at all. Maybe it's about finding hidden wisdom. A shadow moved behind her, and Daphne spun around, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. For just a moment, she could have sworn she saw the outline of a tall figure watching her from between the bookshelves. But when she blinked, it was gone. Somewhere in the distance, Scooby and Shaggy screamed in unison, followed by the sound of them running at full speed. The investigation had only just begun, and already Daphne sensed they were dealing with something far more complex than a simple haunting. Someone didn't want them to find Holloway's secret, but the question was, why? What was really hidden in this library that was worth protecting with such elaborate deception? She looked back at Holloway's journal, her mind racing with possibilities. The answer was here somewhere, hidden among the thousands of books and decades of dust. And she was determined to find it. Velma and Fred cautiously ascended the spiral staircase, their flashlights creating long shadows that danced across the rows of ancient books. The ghost had vanished somewhere on the second floor, leaving behind only an eerie silence and the faint smell of old paper mixed with something chemical, something that Velma's sharp mind immediately flagged as suspicious. "Fred, do you smell that?" she asked, pausing on the landing to sniff the air. "It's like ... phosphorus mixed with magnesium. Components commonly used in theatrical special effects and stage magic." Fred nodded, examining the marble floor with his flashlight. "And look at this scuff marks, recent ones. Someone's been moving heavy equipment through here." He knelt down and ran his finger along a groove in the floor. "These wheel marks are fresh, probably from a dolly or cart." Meanwhile, on the first floor, Daphne had carefully picked the lock on the display case, a skill she de-learned from watching countless mystery documentaries. She gently lifted Holloway's journal, feeling the weight of history in her hands. As she opened it fully, several loose papers fell out, old financial statements, investment records, and letters. One letter in particular caught her attention. It was addressed to Holloway from someone named E.B. and dated 1918. "Dear Augustus, you warned me not to invest in Blackwood's railroad scheme, but I didn't listen. I thought you were being overly cautious, perhaps even jealous of my opportunity. Now I've lost everything, $50,000 gone in a fraud. You tried to teach me to investigate before investing, to ask questions, to demand transparency. I was a fool. The Blackwood family has always been ruthless in business, but I learned too late. Your wisdom was worth more than all the promises of quick riches. E.B. Blackwood, Daphne murmured. The same name as the businessman who wants to buy this property. She quickly photographed a letter with her phone. This was too much of a coincidence. Flipping through more pages, she found Holloway's financial philosophy laid out in detailed entries. One section was titled, "The Compound Effect of Small Decisions." Most people underestimate the power of small, consistent actions. Saving just $5 per day seems insignificant, but over 40 years, with compound interest at 7% annually, that becomes dollar. Daphne felt her heart race. This wasn't just financial advice. This was the treasure everyone had been searching for. Holloway hadn't hidden gold or jewels. He'd hidden a blueprint for financial success that anyone could follow. Across the library, Shaggy and Scooby had reluctantly entered the reading rooms, which were filled with long wooden tables and upholstered chairs covered in dust sheets. The beam from Shaggy's flashlight trembled as badly as his hands. Like Scoob, maybe we should just pretend we checked everything and head back to the gang, Shaggy suggested hopefully. Rhea, rude Rydia. Scooby agreed, already turning to leave. But then they both froze. On one of the reading tables sat a plate of fresh sandwiches, turkey, ham, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes perfectly arranged and completely out of place in an abandoned library. Scooby-Doo, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Shaggy whispered, his fear momentarily forgotten. Rand reaches. Scooby's tail wagged enthusiastically. They approached the table cautiously, but their hunger quickly overcame their suspicion. As they reached for the sandwiches, a voice boomed from the darkness. Those who take without earning shall face the consequences. The ghost materialized directly behind them, its green glow illuminating the entire room. It raised its ledger high, and pages began tearing out and flying through the air like paper daggers. Shaggy and Scooby screamed in perfect harmony and bolted from the room, sandwiches forgotten. But as they ran, Scooby's collar caught on something, a nearly invisible wire stretched across the doorway at exactly dog height. The wire pulled taut, triggering a mechanism that made a section of the wall slide open, revealing a hidden passage. Zoinks! Scooby, look! Shaggy pointed at the secret door, even as they continued running. Behind them, the ghost gave chase, moaning about unauthorized withdrawals and interest penalties. The two frightened friends raced through the maze of bookshelves, taking random turns until they literally crashed into Velma and Fred on the second floor. The four of them tumbled into a heap. Guys, what happened? Fred asked as everyone untangled themselves. Like, the ghost tried to give us a lecture about taking free sandwiches, Shaggy panted. And then Scooby accidentally opened a secret door. A secret door? Velma's eyes lit up. Where? In the reading room, but the ghost is probably still there. And there you are. Daphne's voice called out as she climbed the spiral staircase to join them, carrying Holloway's journal and the letters. I found something amazing. Holloway's financial philosophy is all laid out in this journal. It's incredible. And there's a connection to the Blackwood family. Before she could finish, a thunderous bang echoed through the library. All the lights suddenly flickered on dusty chandeliers blazing to life, casting the entire space in golden light. But more surprising was what the light revealed. They were surrounded by projection equipment. Speakers, holographic displays, and special effects machinery cleverly hidden among the bookshelves. Jinkies! Velma exclaimed. This entire haunting has been staged with technology. Fred immediately began examining the equipment. This is sophisticated stuff. Holographic projectors for the ghost, pneumatic systems for throwing those coins, speakers for the moaning sounds. Someone spent serious money setting this up. But why? Daphne wondered aloud. What's the point of scaring people away from the library? Maybe, Velma suggested, pushing her glasses up thoughtfully. Whoever's doing this doesn't want anyone to find what you just found, Daphne. If Holloway's real treasure is financial wisdom that he wanted shared with the public, someone might want to keep that knowledge hidden or claim it for themselves. A slow clapping sound echoed from the first floor. Everyone leaned over the railing to see a tall, elegant woman in an expensive business suit standing in the entrance. She had sharp features, silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, and cold eyes that assessed them like they were numbers on a balance sheet. "Very impressive children," the woman said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Dr. Patricia Montgomery, I presume you've heard of me? Economics professor, author of 6 best-selling books, and the world's foremost expert on Augustus Holloway's financial theories? You," Velma called down. "You're one of our suspects." Dr. Montgomery smiled without warmth. "Suspect? My dear, I'm a respected academic. I've been trying to access Holloway's private papers for years to complete my research. Do you have any idea how valuable those documents are? His original journals, his investment strategies, his correspondence with the greatest business minds of the early 20th century? Those papers could be worth millions in historical and educational value. So you created the ghost to scare everyone away while you searched for them yourself?" Fred accused. "Don't be ridiculous." "I would never resort to such theatrics." But her eyes flickered toward a door marked "Basement Vault," just for a split second, but enough for Daphne to notice. "The vault," Daphne said quietly. "That's where the most valuable documents would be stored." That's what she's really after. Before anyone could move, the lights went out again, plunging them back into darkness. When flashlights clicked back on, Dr. Montgomery was gone, and the ghost had reappeared, this time on the 3rd floor, directly above them. "Leave now or face the compound interest of your foolishness," it wailed, and gold coins began raining down like a metallic storm. "Gang, we need a plan," Fred shouted over the chaos. "That vault is the key to this mystery. Whatever's down there is worth protecting and worth fighting for." Daphne clutched Holloway's journal to her chest, her mind racing. She thought about the letter from E.B., about the Blackwood family's fraud, about Holloway's principles of saving and investing wisely, about how someone was trying to keep this wisdom hidden. "Fred's right," she said with determination. "We need to get into that vault. If Holloway wanted his financial wisdom shared with the world, then that's exactly what we're going to do, ghost or no ghost." Velma nodded. "But first, we need to figure out who's really behind this haunting. My analysis suggests we're dealing with multiple suspects working together, possibly for different motives. The equipment is too sophisticated and expensive for just one person." As coins continued to rain around them and the ghost moaning grew louder, the gang huddled together to form their plan. Somewhere in the darkness, multiple pairs of eyes watched them, some with greed, some with desperation, and some with something far more sinister. The mystery was deepening, and the stakes were higher than any of them had realized. The secret to infinite wealth wasn't just about money. It was about power, knowledge, and who got to control both. The gang reconvened in a small reading alcove on the 2nd floor, using a circle of flashlights to create a makeshift war room. Daphne spread out Holloway's journal and the letters on a dusty table, while Velma connected her tablet to a portable scanner, documenting everything they'd found. "Okay, let's think about this economically," Velma began, her analytical mind shifting into high gear. "In any mystery, we need to follow the money, follow who benefits and who loses. Let's list our suspects and their financial motives." Fred pulled out a notepad. "First, there's Cornelius Blackwood. He wants to buy this property for $2 million to build luxury condos. If the library gets renovated and reopened, that sale is off the table forever." "Right," Velma continued. "From a business perspective, he has a strong incentive to sabotage the renovation and force the city to sell. Every day the ghost appears, the city loses $2,000 in contractor fees. At that rate, it won't take long before they decide the building is more trouble than it's worth." Daphne held up the letter from E.B., that mentioned the Blackwood family's historical fraud. And there's a family connection to Holloway. The Blackwoods have a history of shady business deals. Maybe Cornelius is trying to prevent people from learning about his family's past. Second suspect, Dr. Patricia Montgomery, Fred added. She wants access to Holloway's papers for her research, or maybe to profit from them by publishing more best-selling books. Academic thing can be very lucrative. Shaggy raised his hand tentatively. Like, I hate to interrupt the detective stuff, but shouldn't we be more worried about the ghost that is currently throwing gold coins at us? Row, Scooby agreed emphatically. Velma shook her head. Those aren't real gold coins, guys. I managed to grab one during the chaos. She held up a gleaming coin that looked like solid gold. See? It feels real. But watch this. She held it under her flashlight and tilted it. The color shifts slightly. It's gold-plated copper, not solid gold. Probably theatrical props that can be reused over and over. Someone's using pneumatic tubes to shoot them through the air. Pneumatic tubes? Daphne asked. Like the ones banks used to use for drive-through transactions? Exactly. There must be a network of them hidden in the walls. That's how the ghost can make coins appear anywhere in the building. Velma pulled up architectural drawings on her tablet. According to the original blueprints I found in the city archives, Holloway installed a pneumatic tube system throughout the library for delivering books between floors. Someone's retrofitted it to launch these fake gold coins. Clever, Fred admitted. That's a significant investment in the haunting. We're talking thousands of dollars in equipment and planning. Which brings us to suspect number 3, Velma said. Jack Lucky Morrison, the contractor whose bid was rejected. He lost a potential $700,000 job when the city chose a cheaper company. Maybe he's sabotaging the project, so the city will fire the current contractor and come back to him. Daphne was only half listening. She'd been reading through Holloway's journal, and one entry had captured her complete attention. It was dated December 1919, just months before his death. I've decided to create a final lesson for future generations. My financial principles, the rules I've lived by, are simple, but most people never learn them. Schools don't teach practical economics. Parents often don't know themselves. So wealth stays concentrated among a small group who understand the rules while everyone else struggles. I'm going to hide my most valuable possession, not my money, but my knowledge, right here in this library. I'll create a puzzle that requires patience, observation, and most importantly, the willingness to learn rather than just grab what looks valuable. Those who understand the difference between true wealth and mere riches will find what I've hidden. Those who only see dollar signs will miss it entirely. The key is understanding that wealth has 3 forms: financial capital, money; human capital, knowledge and skills; and social capital, relationships and reputation. Build all 3, and you'll never be poor. Focus only on money, and you'll never be rich, no matter how much you have. Guys, Daphne said, her voice trembling with excitement, I think I understand what Holloway did. He didn't hide a pile of gold or a treasure chest. He created a teaching tool, a way to prove his economic principles through action. The secret to infinite wealth isn't something you find. It's something you learn. Before anyone could respond, the temperature in the library dropped dramatically. Their breath became visible in the air, and frost began forming on the nearby windows despite the summer heat outside. That's not natural, Velma stated, pulling out a small thermometer from her pocket. The temperature just dropped 30 degrees in 5 seconds. Someone's pumping in cold air, probably to add to the haunted atmosphere. The ghost materialized again, this time much close enough that they could see details in its translucent form. It was indeed wearing clothing from the 1890s, and the ledger it carried had actual pages filled with handwritten numbers and calculations. You seek the treasure? The ghost boomed. Then, answer me this. A man saves $10 from his first paycheck, $11 from his second, $12 from his third, increasing by $1 EAC each time. After 40 years of biweekly paychecks, how much has he saved? It's giving us a math problem? Shaggy whispered in confusion. No, Daphne realized, her eyes widening. It's testing us. Holloway said his treasure would only go to those willing to learn. The ghost isn't just scary, it's educational. Velma was already calculating on her tablet. This is an arithmetic sequence problem. The sum of an arithmetic sequence is n, a plus n, 2, where n is the number of terms, and a is the first term, and n is the last term. With biweekly paychecks for 40 years, that's 1,040 paychecks. The ghost let out a wailing sound that might have been approval. Correct. But wealth is not merely saved, it must be invested. With 7% annual compound interest, those savings become millions. This is incredible, Daphne breathed. The ghost is teaching financial literacy. Fred frowned thoughtfully. But wait, if the ghost is actually trying to educate people about Holloway's principles, then why is it scaring everyone away? That's contradictory. Unless, Velma suggested, her eyes narrowing, there are two different operations happening here. The real ghost, or whoever's pretending to be Holloway, is trying to protect his teachings and share them properly. But someone else is using the haunting as cover for their own purposes. Someone who wants to get into that vault for reasons that have nothing to do with education. A commotion erupted from the first floor, shouting voices and the sound of metal crashing against metal. The gang rushed to the railing and looked down to see Dr. Montgomery and a burly man in a construction vest arguing over a large crowbar. Both of them were trying to pry open the basement vault door. Morrison! Fred identified the man immediately from the photos Miss Thornbury had shown them. Back off, Montgomery, Morrison growled. I got here first. Whatever's in that vault is mine. You're a fool if you think Holloway hid actual gold down there, Dr. Montgomery shot back. The real treasure is his financial records worth far more than any amount of old coins to someone who knows how to monetize them properly. You're both wrong, said a smooth, cultured voice. A third figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man in an expensive three-piece suit with slicked-back silver hair and a cold smile. Cornelius Blackwood III stepped into the light, holding what appeared to be an old iron key. The real treasure is the property itself. Once I prove this building is too dangerous and historically compromised, the city will have no choice but to sell it to me. Then I can tear it down and build something actually profitable. Blackwood, Morrison spat. You hired me to sabotage the renovation from the inside, and cut me out of the deal. And you, Montgomery, Blackwood continued, ignoring Morrison. I paid you $50,000 to research the building's layout and find the vault. Our agreement was to split whatever we found 60-40, but I've decided I prefer 100-0. From their vantage point above, Daphne felt anger rising in her chest. They're all working together, or at least they were. They staged a haunting to scare people away while they searched for Holloway's treasure. But now they're turning on each other because of greed. Classic economic principle, Velma observed. When there's no trust and everyone acts in pure self-interest, cooperation breaks down. It's called the prisoner's dilemma in game theory. The ghost suddenly materialized between the three arguing criminals, its form glowing brighter than ever. Greed is a poor investment. Those who hoard wisdom and wealth for themselves will find neither. All three suspects screamed and scattered in different directions. Blackwood dropped his key, which skittered across the marble floor. That's our chance, Fred exclaimed. Gang, let's split up again. Daphne, Velma go for that key and try to open the vault. We need to see what's really down there. Shaggy, Scooby, you two distract the suspects and keep them from interfering. I'll try to catch whoever's operating the ghost equipment. Like, why do we always get the dangerous job? Shaggy complained yet again. Because we're rude rat rit, Scooby said with resignation. That's the spirit, Scoob. Daphne encouraged as they all split up. Daphne and Velma raced down the spiral staircase, their footsteps echoing on the metal. The key was lying near the vault door, glinting in the eerie green light that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. Velma scooped it up while Daphne examined the heavy iron door. "It's a dual-lock system," Daphne observed. "We need the key and a combination. There's a dial here with numbers from 0 to 99. Velma studied the door thoughtfully. Holloway loved teaching through puzzles. The combination must be something related to his financial principles. She pulled out her tablet and brought up her notes. He was born in 1848, died in 1920, founded the library in 1892, and made his first million in 1885. "Wait," Daphne said, pulling out the journal. "Look at this entry. The magic number is 72. Divide 72 by your interest rate, and you'll know how many years it takes to double your money. This simple rule has guided every investment I've made." "The rule of 72, Velma exclaimed. "It's a fundamental financial concept. If that's the combination ... She turned the dial carefully. 7, 2, and then stopped. "But it's a 2-digit combination lock. We need 4 numbers. Daphne scanned the journal desperately. "He mentions compound interest at 7% in multiple places. 7%... 72 divided by 7 is approximately 10.3, so about 10 years to double your money." She grabbed the dial. "Try 7207. Velma inserted the key and turned it while Daphne input the combination. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep mechanical clunk, the vault door's locks disengaged. The heavy door swung open slowly, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Meanwhile, Fred had discovered the control room for the ghost equipment hidden behind a false bookshelf on the 3rd floor. Inside was a sophisticated setup. Computers running hologram software, audio mixing boards, controls for pneumatic tubes, temperature regulation systems, and even elaborate costume hanging on a rack, the physical ghost outfit used when the holographic projections weren't enough. But the control room was empty. Whoever had been operating it was gone. "They knew we were getting close," Fred muttered, examining the equipment. "This must have cost $50,000 or more to install. Someone's been planning this for months." On the 1st floor, Shaggy and Scooby were doing their best to corral the 3 suspects, which mostly involved running away from them while accidentally knocking over bookshelves and display cases that blocked their pursuers' paths. "Like Scoob, this way," Shaggy called, sliding under a long reading table. "Roque." Scooby followed, his collar catching on a chair leg and pulling it along, which created a domino effect of falling furniture. Dr. Montgomery, trying to chase them, found her expensive heels tangling in the antique carpet. Morrison tripped over a fallen book cart, and Blackwood, attempting to maintain his dignity while running, smashed directly into a full-length mirror, bouncing backward with a comical honk. "Stop those meddling kids," Blackwood shouted, his slicked hair now askew. "And their dog," Morrison added unnecessarily. Back at the vault, Daphne and Velma descended the stone staircase carefully, their flashlights revealing a small rectangular room lined with filing cabinets and bookshelves. But there was no gold, no jewels, no ancient treasure. Just paper, thousands and thousands of documents, journals, and ledgers, all meticulously organized and labeled. "This is it?" Velma whispered, looking around in wonder. "His treasure is ... information?" Daphne moved to the nearest filing cabinet and pulled open a drawer. Inside were carefully preserved documents labeled by year and topic. Investment Strategies 1875 to 1880. Lessons in Compound Interest. Avoiding Speculation and Fraud. The Psychology of Saving. Teaching Children About Money. Another cabinet contained case studies, real stories of people Holloway had helped, with detailed notes about what financial mistakes they'd made, what principles he taught them, and how their lives had changed. There were hundreds of these stories, spanning decades. But the centerpiece of the vault was a large leather-bound book on a marble pedestal, illuminated by a shaft of light from a cleverly placed mirror system that captured moonlight from outside. The book's cover was embossed with gold lettering, "The Infinite Wealth Primer, Augustus Holloway's Complete Guide to Financial Wisdom for All People." "This is it," Daphne breathed, carefully opening the book. "This is the treasure everyone's been searching for." The first page contained a handwritten note. "To whoever finds this book, congratulations. You have demonstrated patience, curiosity, and a willingness to learn the three qualities most essential to building true wealth. This book contains everything I've learned about money, investing, and financial security in my 72 years of life. But more importantly, it contains the one secret that most people never understand. Wealth is not something you find. It is something you create through knowledge, discipline, and consistent action over time. There are no shortcuts, no magic formulas, no buried treasures that will make you rich overnight. But there is a proven path that anyone can follow, regardless of their starting point. I am leaving this book and all my research to the public, free for anyone to access in this library. My only request is that you share what you learn with others. Financial literacy should not be a privilege of the wealthy. It should be a right for all people. The ghost you encountered is my final test. Those who ran from knowledge learned nothing. Those who stayed and engaged with it have already begun their journey to true wealth. Remember, save before you spend. Invest in what you understand. Compound your knowledge daily. These three principles will serve you better than any treasure chest of gold." Augustus Holloway, December 1919. Velma was speed reading through the book, her eyes widening with each page. "Daphne, this is incredible. He's laid out a complete financial education curriculum. Budgeting, saving, investing, avoiding debt traps, understanding compound interest, identifying scams, building multiple income streams, teaching children about money, ... This is exactly what people need, but rarely get. And someone wants to keep it hidden," Daphne realized. Blackwood doesn't want people educated about finance. Educated consumers are harder to exploit. Montgomery wants to claim this research her own and profit from it. Morrison just saw dollar signs and never looked deeper. A loud crash from upstairs interrupted their revelation. The chase was getting more chaotic. "We need to protect this book," Velma said urgently. "This is the real treasure, and we can't let those three get their hands on it." Daphne nodded, carefully lifting the heavy tome. "Holloway wanted this shared with everyone. That's exactly what we're going to do. But first, we catch ourselves a ghost," came Fred's voice from the stairway. He descended with a knowing smile. "Or rather, ghosts. Plural. I found the control room, and I have a pretty good idea of what's really been going on here. Come on, it's time to set a trap." As they emerged from the vault, carrying Holloway's precious book, the ghost materialized one final time in the center of the library. But this time, Daphne noticed something she'd missed before. The ghost's movements were slightly off sync with its voice, and there was a faint shimmer around its edges, telltale signs of holographic projection. "One more test," Daphne said confidently. "Before we reveal the truth, answer me this. If Holloway really wanted his financial wisdom shared freely, why would his ghost scare people away from the library?" The ghost flickered, its form destabilizing. I protect the treasure from those unworthy." "Wrong answer," Velma declared. The real Augustus Holloway would want everyone to have access to this knowledge, regardless of whether they were worthy. Financial education shouldn't be gatekept. It should be freely given. Which means you're not Holloway's ghost at all. You're someone who wants people to believe in the ghost story so they never look for the real treasure. The ghost form began to glitch and distort, revealing the technical setup behind the illusion. "Fred," Daphne called up to the third floor. "Now would be a great time for that trap." Fred grinned and pulled a lever he'd discovered in the control room. Suddenly, the entire holographic system reversed, revealing its source locations. The pneumatic tubes for the fake gold coins became visible. The hidden speakers crackled with feedback. And most importantly, a concealed platform on the second floor, the one from which the ghost had been projected, and where someone had been feeding it lines, was suddenly illuminated by spotlights. Standing on that platform, wearing a motion capture suit covered in sensors and holding a microphone, was someone none of them had expected to see. Miss Thornbury, the elderly librarian. Miss Thornbury? Everyone gasped in unison. The librarian, who suddenly looked much less frail and much more capable, sighed deeply and removed her fake bifocals. I suppose the game is up. But before you judge me, you should know, I'm actually Augustus Holloway's great-great-granddaughter. My real name is Margaret Holloway Thornbury, and everything I've done was to protect my ancestors' legacy. But you called us here. Daphne protested. You're the one who reported the ghost. Because those three, Margaret pointed at Blackwood, Montgomery, and Morrison, who were now cornered by Shaggy and Scooby in a reading alcove. We're going to find the vault eventually. I needed help from people I could trust. People who would understand that the real treasure isn't something to be sold or hoarded, but something to be shared. She climbed down from the platform, moving with practiced ease. I've been protecting this library and my great-great-grandfather's work for 20 years. When the renovation was approved, I knew treasure hunters would come. So I installed the ghost system partly to scare away the greedy ones, partly to test anyone who was serious about finding the truth. The ghost's questions weren't just scary, they were educational. Anyone who actually listened and engaged with them would learn something valuable. Fred crossed his arms. But you still deceived everyone. And those three down there, they're criminals who tried to sabotage this renovation and steal historical artifacts. Which is exactly why I needed your help to catch them, Margaret said simply. I knew if I created a big enough mystery, the real criminals would reveal themselves. And I knew Mystery Inc. would solve it the right way, by being curious, working together, and caring about the truth more than the treasure. Velma had to admit, it was a clever plan. So the ghost was your way of protecting the vault, while also educating anyone patient enough to pay attention. Precisely. My great-great-grandfather believed financial education should be free and accessible. But he also believed people should work for it, should demonstrate they're willing to learn, not just grab what's shiny. The ghost was his final lesson, that the greatest treasures require patience, courage, and an open mind. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Someone had called the authorities about the commotion at the library. Wait, Shaggy asked from his position guarding the three suspects. So, there really wasn't any actual gold? All that running and being scared was for a book? Not just any book, Shaggy, Daphne said, holding up the Infinite Wealth Primer. This book contains information that could help millions of people make better financial decisions. Knowledge that could help them avoid debt, build savings, invest wisely, and achieve real financial security. That's worth more than any amount of gold. I guess, Shaggy conceded. But gold can buy a lot of Scooby snacks. Ruby racks. Scooby agreed enthusiastically. Everyone laughed, the tension of the evening finally breaking. But as the police arrived and began taking Blackwood, Montgomery, and Morrison into custody for attempted theft, trespassing, and fraud, Daphne couldn't help feeling that something important had shifted. They hadn't just solved a mystery. They'd uncovered something that could make a real difference in people's lives. The question now was, what would they do with it? The next morning, sunlight streamed through the library's Gothic windows, making the dust particles dance like tiny golden coins far more beautiful and honest than the fake ones that had been flying around the night before. The gang sat around one of the long reading tables with Margaret Holloway Thornbury and Lieutenant Morrison of the Coolville Police Department, no relation to Jack Lucky Morrison, the crooked contractor. So let me get this straight, Lieutenant Morrison said, rubbing his temples. Miss Thornbury here created an elaborate haunting to protect a book. 3 separate criminals were trying to exploit said haunting for their own purposes, and you kids somehow figured the whole thing out in one night? That's about the size of it, Fred confirmed with a modest smile. Margaret had made coffee and brought out pastries. Apparently, she'd been living in a hidden apartment within the library for the past 3 weeks to protect it full time. I know I technically broke some laws with the fake haunting, she admitted. But I can prove that Blackwood, Montgomery, and Morrison broke far more serious ones. She pulled out a laptop and showed them evidence she'd been collecting. Video footage of Morrison sabotaging renovation work email exchanges between Montgomery and Blackwood planning to steal historical documents, financial records showing Blackwood had tried to bribe city officials to condemn the building. This is solid evidence, Lieutenant Morrison agreed. The 3 of them will be facing charges for conspiracy, attempted theft, bribery, and fraud. As for you, Miss Thornbury, I think given that you were protecting historical property and you cooperated fully once the real criminals were caught, the district attorney might be lenient. Probably community service and a fine. I can accept that, Margaret said gracefully. It was worth it to protect my great-great-grandfather's legacy. Velma had been studying The Infinite Wealth primer all morning, taking copious notes. Margaret, this book is incredible. Have you read it? Cover to cover, dozens of times, Margaret replied with obvious pride. Augustus Holloway wasn't just wealthy, he was wise. He understood something that most people never learn. That financial security isn't about getting rich quick. It's about making smart decisions consistently over time. She opened the book to a section titled The 3 Foundations of Wealth and read aloud. First foundation. Pay yourself first. Before you pay any bill, before you buy any luxury, before you do anything else with your paycheck, save at least 10% for your future self. This isn't selfishness, it's survival. The person who saves nothing will always be at the mercy of circumstances. The person who saves consistently will always have options. Second foundation. Invest in understanding. Never put your money into something you don't understand. If someone offers you an investment opportunity and you can't explain how it works to a child, don't invest. Most scams rely on confusion. They make things sound complicated so you won't ask questions. True wealth-building strategies are actually quite simple. Third foundation. Compound your knowledge. Spend at least 30 minutes every day learning something new about money, investing, or business. Read books. Study successful people. Learn from failures, both your own and others. Your earning potential is directly tied to your learning potential. The more you know, the more you grow. That's brilliant, Daphne breathed. It's not complicated advice, but it's powerful. And if people actually followed these principles, they'd be far less likely to fall for scams, rack up credit card debt, or make impulsive financial decisions that ruin their futures. Velma finished. This is exactly the kind of education that should be taught in schools, but usually isn't. Shaggy raised his hand. I have a question. If I spend all my money on food now, but that food gives me energy to solve mysteries, which leads to occasional rewards, is that technically an investment? Everyone stared at him. What? I'm trying to apply the economic principles here. Scooby nodded thoughtfully. Rude roostin', Raggy. Actually, Velma said with a slight smile, there is an economic concept called consumption smoothing. The idea that you should balance present enjoyment with future security. Shaggy, you and Scooby represent one extreme, consuming everything now. Someone like Blackwood represents the other extreme, hoarding everything and never enjoying life. Holloway's philosophy is about finding balance. Margaret nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. My great-great-grandfather always said that money is a tool, not a goal. The goal is living a good life, being secure, helping others, having experiences, leaving the world better than you found it. Money just makes those things easier. Fred had been quietly examining the library's floor plans. Margaret, what's your plan now? The renovation can move forward since the ghost problem is solved. But what about Holloway's book and research? What happens to all of that? Margaret's expression turned serious. That's what I wanted to discuss with you all. According to my great-great-grandfather's will, his financial education materials were supposed to be freely available to the public through this library. But over the years, that wish was forgotten. The library closed, the documents were sealed away, and his wisdom was lost. She stood and walked to the vault entrance, gesturing for them to follow. As they descended once again into the underground room filled with filing cabinets and documents, Margaret continued, I want to honor his original intent. I want to make all of this available, digitize the documents, create educational programs, maybe even develop a curriculum for schools. But I can't do it alone. Daphne felt her heart race with excitement. This was exactly what she'd been hoping to hear. What if we helped? Mystery Inc. could work with you to create a foundation or something. The Holloway Financial Literacy Foundation. We could use his materials to teach people, especially young people, about money management. We could create YouTube videos. Velma added enthusiastically. Animated lessons based on Holloway's principles. Maybe even a series about solving financial mysteries, teaching people how to spot scams, understand contracts, make smart investments. Like a cooking show, but with money instead of food. Shaggy suggested. I'd watch that. Maybe. If there are also snacks. Fred nodded thoughtfully. We'd need to be careful to present everything accurately and responsibly. Financial advice can be dangerous if it's oversimplified or misunderstood. But if we work with actual financial experts and stay true to Holloway's educational mission, then we could genuinely help people, Margaret finished, her eyes bright with emotion. That's all I've ever wanted. Augustus Holloway helped hundreds of people during his lifetime. Imagine if we could help hundreds of thousands or millions with his wisdom. Lieutenant Morrison, who had followed them down, cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt this inspiring moment, but there is a practical problem. This vault and its contents legally belong to the city of Coolsville. You can't just start a foundation and take these documents without permission. What if we didn't take them? Daphne suggested. What if the foundation operated out of this library? The renovation completes, the library reopens, and the Holloway collection becomes its centerpiece. People could come here to learn about financial literacy in person, and we'd also create digital resources for those who can't visit. That's actually a brilliant solution, Margaret said. The library gets renovated and reopened with a unique educational focus that would attract visitors and funding. The city benefits economically, and Holloway's mission is fulfilled. Everyone wins, except Blackwood, Morrison, and Montgomery, Velma noted. They lose pretty significantly. They made their choices, Fred said simply. They chose greed over wisdom, shortcuts over patience, exploitation over education. According to Holloway's own principles, those choices have natural consequences. Margaret pulled out a specific document from one of the filing cabinets, a faded letter dated January 1920, just weeks before Holloway's death. I want to read you something he wrote. It explains better than I can why all of this matters. She read aloud, her voice steady but emotional. Dear future friend, if you're reading this, I am long gone. But my words remain, and with them, I hope, some wisdom worth preserving. I have lived through economic booms and busts. I have seen good people destroyed by bad financial decisions. And I have seen clever people build empires through patient, consistent action. The difference between these two groups is rarely intelligence or luck. It is almost always education. Those who understand how money works have power over their own lives. Those who don't understand are forever at the mercy of others. This is not fair. This is not right. And it is entirely preventable. Financial literacy should not be a privilege of the wealthy, passed down through private tutors and elite schools. It should be a fundamental human right, taught as seriously as reading and mathematics. That is why I have created this library and hidden this collection. Not to hoard knowledge, but to preserve it for those willing to seek it. Not to create a treasure hunt for the greedy, but a learning opportunity for the curious. My hope is that whoever finds this will understand. True wealth is measured not by what you accumulate for yourself, but by what you create and share with others. Build businesses that serve communities. Make investments that create jobs. Share knowledge that empowers people. Leave the world richer in every sense of the word than you found it. That is the secret to infinite wealth. Not a pile of gold, but a cycle of giving that never ends. Yours in hope and prosperity, Augustus Holloway. The vault fell silent, except for the distant sound of cars passing outside. Daphne felt tears prickling her eyes. This wasn't just about solving a mystery anymore. It was about continuing something important, something meaningful. So, Fred said finally, breaking the silence, we need a plan. A real plan for how to make this foundation happen and how to get the city ask permission to use these materials. Velma was already typing on her tablet. I'll draft a proposal we can present to the city council. We'll need to outline the educational benefits, the economic impact of reopening the library with this unique focus, and a timeline for implementation. I can handle the historical and archival side, Margaret offered. I'll catalog everything in the vault and create a preservation plan. Some of these documents are over 100 years old. They need proper care. Daphne and I can work on the curriculum development, Fred suggested. We'll adapt Holloway's principles into age-appropriate lessons for different groups. Kids, teenagers, young adults, and even experienced adults who never learned this stuff. And Shaggy, Scooby, Daphne added with a smile. You two can help us test whether the lessons are actually engaging and fun. If we can make economics interesting enough to hold your attention, we can make it interesting for anyone. Like, we're going to be educational consultants? Shaggy said, perking up. Do educational consultants get paid in food? Rice, rude. Scooby agreed. Everyone laughed, and Lieutenant Morrison shook his head with an amused smile. You kids never cease to amaze me. Most teenagers would just take a reward and move on. You're planning to start an educational foundation. We solve mysteries, Fred said simply, and the biggest mystery in modern society might be why so many people struggle financially when the solutions are actually pretty straightforward. If we can help solve that mystery for even a few people, this will have been worth it. As they climbed back up from the vault, Daphne lingered for a moment, looking at the infinite wealth primer resting on its marble pedestal. She thought about all the people who could benefit from Holloway's wisdom, people struggling with debt, people afraid to invest, people who'd never been taught that financial security was even possible for them. Then she thought about something else, the fact that 3 separate criminals had been willing to break the law, sabotage a renovation, and potentially destroy a historical building just to either suppress this knowledge or profit from it exclusively. Velma, she said quietly as they walked back upstairs, why do you think Blackwood really wanted to stop this information from getting out? I mean, he's already rich. What did he have to lose? Velma adjusted her glasses thoughtfully. That's actually a really good question. And I think the answer reveals something important about how economic power works. When most people are financially illiterate, they're easier to exploit through predatory loans, unnecessary fees, overpriced services, and scam investments. But when people are educated about money, they ask better questions, demand better terms, and make smarter choices. That means less profit for those who benefit from others' ignorance. So, education is actually threatening to people who profit from exploitation, Daphne realized. Exactly. Which is why Augustus Holloway's mission was so radical for his time and still is today. He wasn't just giving people money. He was giving them knowledge and power. That's much more dangerous to an unjust system. They emerged into the main library hall, where morning sunlight now flooded through the Gothic windows, making the entire space look magical rather than haunted. The fake ghost equipment was still visible, but now it just looked like what it was. Clever technology used for a questionable purpose. You know what's funny? Fred mused, examining one of the holographic projectors. Margaret spent thousands of dollars and months of work creating this haunting to protect Holloway's teachings. Meanwhile, the actual teachings are about being smart with money and not making emotional, impulsive decisions. There's some irony there. Margaret overheard him and smiled ruefully. You're not wrong. My great-great-grandfather probably would have found a simpler solution. But I was desperate, and desperate people don't always make the most economical choices. That's actually one of his lessons. Fear makes us stupid about money. Speaking of money, Lieutenant Morrison said, checking his watch, I need to get back to the station to file all the paperwork on this case. But before I go, I want to say something. What you're planning with this foundation. It's important work. If you need any help navigating city bureaucracy or getting the necessary approvals, let me know. I'll do what I can. Thank you, Daphne said sincerely. We're going to need all the help we can get. As the lieutenant left, Shaggy's stomach growled loudly enough to echo through the vast library hall. Like, solving mysteries really works up an appetite. Anyone else starving? Rhea, raving! Scooby enthusiastically agreed. Actually, Margaret said with a conspiratorial smile, I made extra pastries this morning. And I've been thinking, if we're going to work together on this foundation, we should celebrate our partnership. What do you say to a breakfast meeting where we start planning our next steps? Now, that's an investment I can get behind, Shaggy declared. As they gathered around the reading table with coffee, pastries, and laptops, beginning the real work of turning Holloway's century-old dream into a modern reality, Daphne felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not just about this specific project, but about what it represented. They'd come to solve a mystery about a ghost and a hidden treasure. Instead, they'd found something far more valuable, a mission that could genuinely make the world a better place. And if that wasn't the greatest treasure of all, she didn't know what was. Outside, the storm from the previous night had passed, leaving the sky clear and blue-perfect weather for new beginnings. 3 days had passed since the unmasking of the fake ghost and the arrest of Blackwood, Morrison, and Montgomery. The Coolsville City Council had called an emergency session to discuss the situation at the Holloway Memorial Library, and the entire Mystery Inc. gang, along with Margaret Thornbury, sat in the uncomfortable wooden chairs of the council chambers, waiting for their chance to present their proposal. Daphne nervously shuffled the presentation notes they'd prepared. Velma reviewed her tablet for the 100th time, checking facts and figures. Fred sat with his characteristic calm confidence, though even he seemed a bit tense. And Shaggy and Scooby fidgeted in their seats, both dressed in the closest things to formal wear they owned. Shaggy in a green sweater instead of his usual t-shirt, and Scooby wearing a body that Daphne had bought specially for the occasion. Like, remind me again why we have to be here? Shaggy whispered. Can't we just let the adults handle the boring government stuff? Because this is important, Shaggy, Daphne whispered back. We solved the mystery. We found Holloway's treasure. We need to be here to make sure it's used the right way. Rhea. Important. Scooby agreed, though his tale betrayed his nervousness. The council chamber was packed with reporters, curious citizens, and several notable faces. Miss Patricia Montgomery sat in the back row, looking pale and subdued. She'd made bail but was facing criminal charges. Her academic career was essentially over, and several universities had already revoked her teaching positions. She kept her eyes down, avoiding everyone's gaze. The council president, a distinguished woman in her 60s named Counselor Hayes, called the meeting to order with a firm rap of her gavel. "We're here to discuss the situation at the Holloway Memorial Library," Counselor Hayes began. "As everyone now knows, what we thought was a genuine haunting was actually an elaborate deception involving multiple parties with different motives. The good news is that the criminals have been caught, thanks to the efforts of these young people from Mystery Inc." Polite applause rippled through the chamber. Daphne felt her cheeks warm. "However," Counselor Hayes continued, "this situation has raised several complicated questions. First, what should we do about Miss Margaret Thornbury, who created the fake haunting? Second, what should we do with the historical materials discovered in the library vault? And third, should we proceed with the renovation? And if so, what should be the library's focus and mission going forward?" Another counselor, a younger man named Trent Blackwood, Cornelius's nephew, Daphne noted with some concern, raised his hand. "If I may, Madam President, I think we need to be realistic about costs here. This library renovation is already over budget due to the delays caused by the haunting. We're talking about spending $500,000 of taxpayer money on a building that hasn't been used in years. My uncle may have made mistakes. Your uncle attempted to bribe city officials and commit fraud," Counselor Hayes interrupted sharply. "Let's be clear about that." Trent Blackwood's face reddened. "Be that as it may, his basic economic argument still stands. Wouldn't that money be better spent on modern facilities, on technology, on programs that would benefit more people?" "That's exactly what we're proposing," Velma spoke up from the audience, standing with her tablet in hand. "May I present our proposal, Counselor Hayes?" The council president looked surprised but intrigued. "Certainly, Miss Dinkley. Please approach the podium." Velma walked confidently to the front of the chamber, and one by one, the rest of Mystery Inc. and Margaret joined her. Velma connected her tablet to the council's presentation system, and Augustus Holloway's face appeared on the large screen, the same keen-eyed photograph from the library's display case. "Counselors," Velma began, her voice steady and clear, "what we're about to propose isn't just about saving an old building. It's about investing in something that will pay dividends for generations to come. Financial literacy." She advanced to the next slide, which showed startling statistics. "Did you know that 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck? That 60% couldn't handle an unexpected $400 expense? That credit card debt in this country exceeds $1 trillion? These aren't just numbers. They're people struggling because they were never taught basic financial principles." Daphne stepped forward, her purple dress catching the light. "Augustus Holloway understood this problem over a century ago. He dedicated his fortune and his final years to creating a comprehensive financial education program, one that we discovered sealed in the library vault. His materials aren't outdated theories. They're timeless principles that are just as relevant today as they were in 1920. Fred took over, displaying architectural plans and budget projections. "We're proposing the creation of the Holloway Financial Literacy Center, housed in the renovated library. The renovation cost remains $500,000, but we've identified 3 revenue streams that would make this facility self-sustaining within 2 years." He clicked to a detailed financial breakdown. "First, grants and donations. We've already been contacted by 5 financial institutions and 2 educational foundations interested in supporting financial literacy programs. They've indicated potential donations totaling $200,000 annually. Second, educational workshops and classes. We could charge modest fees for specialized courses while keeping basic resources free. Projected revenue, $75,000 annually. Third, digital content. We create YouTube videos, online courses, and educational materials based on Holloway's work, with ad revenue and sponsorships supporting the center. Projected revenue, $50,000 to $100,000 annually. That's $325,000 to $375,000 per year. Velma added, showing a 5-year projection graph. After covering operational costs of approximately $200,000 annually, including staff salaries, building maintenance, and program expenses, the center would generate a surplus that could be reinvested into expanded programs or other city educational initiatives. Margaret stepped forward, her hands clasped nervously, but her voice strong. I know I made mistakes with the fake haunting. I was trying to protect my great-great-grandfather's legacy, but I did it in the wrong way. I'm prepared to accept whatever legal consequences come from that. However, I am asking this council to not let my mistakes destroy something that could help thousands of people. She paused, emotion clear in her voice. Augustus Holloway grew up poor. He educated himself, made wise financial decisions, and became wealthy. But he never forgot where he came from. He spent the last decades of his life trying to give others the tools he had to learn the hard way. That mission shouldn't end because I was foolish, or because 3 criminals tried to exploit it, or because it's easier to tear down an old building than to reimagine it. Shaggy surprised everyone by stepping forward. Like, I know I'm not the smartest guy about money and stuff. I spend pretty much everything I have on food. But listening to Mr. Holloway's principles these past few days, even I understood them. And if I can get it, anybody can. That's kind of the point, right? Financial stuff shouldn't be so complicated that regular people can't understand it. Rhea, Scooby added emphatically, his body slightly crooked. Reopal read Relp. A ripple of sympathetic laughter went through the chamber. Even Councillor Hayes smiled. Velma brought up the final slide, a mock-up of what the renovated library could look like, with modern lighting, comfortable learning spaces, computer stations, and a special exhibition area featuring Holloway's original materials behind protective glass. The Holloway Financial Literacy Center would serve multiple communities, students learning basic economics, adults seeking to improve their financial situations, seniors protecting themselves from scams, small business owners needing guidance, and anyone who wants to make smarter money decisions. But here's what makes this truly special, Daphne added, her voice gaining passion. Everything would be free or low cost. No barrier to entry. Holloway believed financial literacy should be a human right, not a privilege. The center would honor that vision while generating enough revenue to sustain itself and even expand. Fred concluded. Councillor Blackwood asked if this money could be better spent elsewhere. We respectfully argue that there is no better investment than education, especially education that directly impacts people's economic well-being. Every dollar spent on this center could help someone avoid thousands of dollars in debt, make better investment decisions, or achieve financial security they thought was impossible. The presentation ended with Holloway's own words displayed on the screen. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The same is true for financial education. We cannot change the past, but we can invest in the future. And that investment will compound across generations. Councillor Hayes leaned back in her chair, studying the young people at the podium. That was impressive. Very impressive. Do any of my fellow council members have questions? Trent Blackwood raised his hand, his expression skeptical. This all sounds wonderful in theory, but you're teenagers. With all due respect, what qualifies you to run an educational foundation? What happens when you get bored and move on to your next mystery? It was a fair question, and Daphne had been expecting it. You're right that we're young, and we don't have decades of experience. That's exactly why we're not proposing to run this ourselves. We're proposing to work with the city to hire qualified financial educators, librarians, and administrators. Mystery Inc. would serve on an advisory board, help with curriculum development based on Holloway's materials, and use our platform to promote financial literacy to young people. But the day-to-day operations would be handled by professionals. Margaret Thornbury has agreed to serve as historical curator and archivist, Velma added. Despite her mistakes with the fake haunting, no one knows Holloway's work better than she does. Her expertise is invaluable, and we believe people deserve second chances when they're genuinely trying to do good. Another counselor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chun, spoke up. I have a question for Miss Thornbury. If we approve this plan and you avoid jail time, what guarantee do we have that you won't engage in similar deceptions in the future? Margaret met Mrs. Chun's eyes directly. You have my word, and I understand that might not mean much right now. But I can tell you this. I created the fake ghost because I was afraid that my great-great-grandfather's work would be lost or exploited. Fear makes people do foolish things. But these young people have shown me a better way. Instead of protecting knowledge by hiding it, we should protect it by sharing it so widely that no one person or group can control it. I won't make the same mistake again because I don't need to. If this center is created, Holloway's mission will be secured through transparency and community involvement, not secrets and deception. What about the 3 criminals? Another counselor asked. Montgomery, Morrison, and the other Blackwood. They all tried to profit from or suppress this knowledge. Does that suggest there's something dangerous about making these materials public? Fred fielded this one. Actually, it proves the opposite. They tried to profit or suppress precisely because the information is powerful. Blackwood wanted to keep people financially ignorant so they'd be easier to exploit. Montgomery wanted to claim credit for work that wasn't hers. Morrison just wanted quick money. But none of them actually understood Holloway's core message, that wealth created through exploitation and deception is unstable and ultimately self-destructive. Real, lasting prosperity comes from creating value, helping others, and building trust. That's what this center would teach. Counselor Hayes looked around at her fellow council members. I'm inclined to support this proposal, but I want to see a detailed budget and timeline before we vote. Can you provide that within 2 weeks? Absolutely, Velma confirmed. We've already begun working on detailed financials. We can have everything ready for your next meeting. Then we'll table this discussion until then. In the meantime, I'm authorizing the renovation to proceed. The building needs work regardless of its ultimate purpose. Miss Thornbury, you'll need to meet with the city attorney regarding your legal situation. But I'm recommending community service and restitution rather than jail time, given your cooperation and the lack of actual harm caused. Margaret's relief was visible. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you so much. As the meeting adjourned and people began filing out of the chamber, several reporters swarmed Mystery Inc., asking questions about the mystery, the treasure, and their plans. Daphne answered as best she could, but she was distracted by a figure approaching from the back of the room. It was Dr. Patricia Montgomery, looking years older than she had just days ago. She stopped a respectful distance away, wringing her hands nervously. I wanted to apologize, she said quietly. To all of you, but especially to Miss Thornbury. I betrayed everything I claimed to believe in as an educator. I let greed and ambition override my integrity. There's no excuse for that. Margaret studied her for a long moment. Why did you do it, Patricia? You were already successful. You'd written best-selling books. Why wasn't that enough? Montgomery's eyes glistened with tears. Because in academia, you're only as good as your last publication. I was terrified of becoming irrelevant, of being forgotten. When Blackwood approached me with his plan and offered money, I saw it as an opportunity to secure my legacy. But I realize now that I was destroying my legacy, not securing it. Holloway built something that lasted over a century because it was built on truth and generosity. I tried to build something on lies and selfishness. That doesn't last. No, Daphne said softly. It doesn't. But the good news is that it's never too late to change course. Holloway always believed in second chances. He gave hundreds of people loans and fresh starts when they made financial mistakes. Maybe you could take this experience and actually learn from it. Montgomery nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm gonna lose my university positions. I'll probably lose my reputation too. But maybe I can use whatever time I have left to do something actually worthwhile. Maybe I can contribute to your center somehow, even if it's just volunteering or sharing what I did learn about Holloway's life before I betrayed his principles. We'll see, Margaret said neutrally. You've got a lot of rebuilding to do, Patricia. Trust is earned slowly and lost quickly, another one of Augustus's principles. But if you're serious about making amends, there might be a place for you eventually. As Montgomery left, looking both humbled and slightly hopeful, Fred turned to the group. You know what? I think that might have been the most important lesson of this whole mystery. What do you mean? Velma asked. Holloway's ghost, or rather Margaret's fake ghost, kept talking about investments and compound interest, right? But the real compound interest isn't just financial. It's behavioral. Every choice we make compounds over time. Montgomery made choices based on fear and greed, and those choices compounded into criminal behavior and a ruined career. But if she starts making different choices, now honest, generous, educational choices, those will compound too. Maybe not into fame or fortune, but into something more valuable, redemption and purpose. That's actually profound. Fred, Daphne said, impressed. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, he joked, but his eyes were serious. This mystery taught me that financial principles are really just life principles. Save before you spend, in other words, invest in your future self. Invest in what you understand. Don't follow crowds or chase trends. Compound your knowledge, keep learning and growing. Those rules work for money, but they also work for relationships, careers, health, everything. Jinkies, you're right, Velma agreed. Holloway's genius wasn't just teaching people about money. He was teaching them about sustainable decision-making in general. Like, can sustainable decision-making include a sustainable decision to get lunch? Shaggy interjected hopefully. Because I'm sustainably hungry. Rhea, runch. Scooby's stomach growled in agreement. Everyone laughed, the tension of the council meeting finally breaking. As they walked out of the chambers into the bright afternoon sunlight, Daphne felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They'd solved the mystery, protected historical materials, stopped 3 criminals, and potentially started something that could help thousands of people. But more than that, she'd learned something about herself. She'd always loved solving mysteries, but this one had shown her that the best mysteries to solve were the ones where the solution made the world tangibly better. Finding hidden treasure was fun, but creating lasting value that was truly rewarding. Hey guys, she said as they walked toward the mystery machine. I know we usually just solve mysteries and move on, but what if we actually followed through on this one? What if we really helped get this center off the ground? I'm in, Fred said immediately. This feels important. Me too, Velma agreed. I've already started outlining curriculum ideas. There's so much we could do with digital education platforms, double quotes. Like, as long as it doesn't interfere with mealtimes, I guess I'm in too, Shaggy said with a grin. Roo, Scooby added happily. Margaret, who had been walking with them, stopped and turned to face the group. You know, when I called you 3 days ago, I thought I just needed help catching some criminals. I never imagined you'd actually care about Augustus's mission beyond solving the mystery. Thank you, all of you. You've given me hope that his dream really can come true. We haven't done anything yet, Daphne pointed out. We still have to get council approval, raise funds, hire staff, develop programs, True, Margaret acknowledged. But you've already done the hardest part. You've believed that it's possible. Augustus always said that belief is the first investment in any venture. Everything else follows from that. As they climbed into the mystery machine and headed toward their favorite diner for a celebratory lunch, Daphne looked back at the City Hall building, then pulled out her phone and took a photo of the modern structure beside the historic library, visible in the distance old and new, tradition and innovation, problems and solutions, all coexisting in the same frame. She posted the photo to Mystery Inc. as social media with a caption, "Sometimes the greatest treasure isn't gold or jewels, it is knowledge that can change lives." Stay tuned for our next adventure, helping to create the Holloway Financial Literacy Center. Hashtag Mystery Inc., hashtag financial literacy, hashtag invest in knowledge. Within minutes, comments and questions started flooding in from their followers. People wanted to know more about Holloway, about his principles, about when the center would open. The interest was overwhelming and exciting. "Looks like people really want this," Velma observed, looking at the rapidly increasing engagement on the post. "Of course they do," Fred said. "Everyone wants financial security, but most people have no idea how to achieve it. If we can actually deliver on what we've promised, make Holloway's wisdom accessible and practical for modern audiences, this could be huge." "No pressure or anything," Shaggy muttered. But Daphne felt energized rather than pressured. For the first time, she understood what Augustus Holloway must have felt when he decided to dedicate his fortune to education. There was something deeply satisfying about solving a mystery that kept giving benefits long after it was solved. The ghost of the Holloway Memorial Library hadn't been real, but the legacy it protected was more real than any specter could ever be. And that legacy was about to compound in ways that would make the old millionaire proud. As they pulled into the diner parking lot, Scooby spotted something that made his ears perk up. A help wanted sign in the window. "Relp rented," he pointed excitedly. "Like, Scoob, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Shaggy asked. "Rat, we should rent jobs to earn money for our own financial security." "Exactly. Mr. Holloway would be proud." "Wait, are you two actually considering getting jobs because of what you learned from this mystery?" Daphne asked, amazed. "Like, maybe," Shaggy said. It was such an unexpected moment of maturity that everyone fell silent for a second. Then Velma started laughing, followed by Fred, then Daphne, and finally Shaggy and Scooby joined in, not entirely sure what was so funny but happy to be part of the moment. "Come on," Fred said, still chuckling. "Let's get lunch. And Shaggy, if you're really serious about that job, we'll help you apply after we eat. Like, let's not get crazy." Shaggy backpedaled. "I said maybe, not definitely." "Rhea, Raby," Scooby agreed. But as they walked into the diner, Daphne noticed Shaggy grab a job application anyway, folding it and stuffing it in his pocket when he thought no one was looking. She smiled to herself. The compound effect of good ideas was already working. This mystery had taught them all something valuable. Now the real adventure was just beginning. The adventure of turning that knowledge into action and watching it grow. 2 months had passed since the dramatic confrontation at the Holloway Memorial Library. The autumn leaves were turning golden and red, matching the warm afternoon light that now flooded through the library's freshly cleaned Gothic windows. The renovation was complete, and today was the grand opening of the Holloway Financial Literacy Center. Daphne stood in the main hall, taking in the transformation. The old building had retained its historical character, the original oak bookshelves, the spiral staircases, the crystal chandeliers, but now everything gleamed with careful restoration. Modern touches blended seamlessly with the vintage architecture. Comfortable reading nooks with charging stations, interactive displays explaining economic concepts, computer stations for online learning, and a beautiful exhibition area where Augustus Holloway's original journal and documents were displayed behind climate-controlled glass. The centerpiece was a bronze statue of Holloway himself, seated in a reading chair with an open book on his lap and a kind expression on his face. The plaque at its base read, "Knowledge is wealth. Wisdom is fortune. Generosity is the greatest investment of all. Daphne." Velma called, rushing over with her ever-present tablet. The mayor just arrived, and local news stations are setting up for the opening ceremony. We're about to start. Outside, a crowd had gathered far larger than anyone had expected. There were families with children, college students, seniors, local business owners, educators, and even some people who had driven from neighboring cities after hearing about the center on social media. Mystery Inc.'s promotional campaign had worked better than they dared to hope. Fred stood near the entrance, helping to organize the crowd. Shaggy and Scooby were supposed to be helping him, but they'd gotten distracted by the refreshment table that Margaret had set up, though to be fair, Shaggy had actually started working part-time at that diner, proving that some lessons really did stick. Like Scoop, we should probably get back to helping Fred, Shaggy said, through a mouthful of cookie. Okay, Rutgers Roan more rookie, Scooby replied, reaching for the tray. Scooby-Doo, we have a job to do, Daphne called with mock sternness. Roy, Scooby sighed, but he trotted over to help manage the crowd, Shaggy trailing behind with cookies stuffed in his pockets. Margaret stood near the entrance, greeting visitors and looking happier than Daphne had ever seen her. She'd successfully completed her community service teaching financial literacy at local schools, which she discovered she loved, and the charges against her had been reduced to a misdemeanor with no jail time. The mayor of Coolsville, a gregarious man named Thomas Chun, Mrs. Chun's son, as it turned out, stepped up to a portable podium that had been set up on the library's front steps. The crowd quieted as news cameras focused on him. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to this historic occasion. The Holloway Financial Literacy Center represents a commitment to something that should be available to everyone: the knowledge and tools to achieve financial security. A gesture toward Mystery Inc., who stood to the side feeling slightly awkward with all the attention. This center exists because 5 young people and 1 determined woman refused to let greed and ignorance win. They solved a mystery, yes, but more importantly, they recognized the value of what they found and fought to share it with all of us. Applause rippled through the crowd. Daphne felt her cheeks warm, but also felt a swell of pride. The Holloway Center is funded through a combination of city budget allocation, private donations, and an innovative digital education program that's already generating revenue. Mayor Chun continued. Today, we honor that belief by making his wisdom freely available to anyone who seeks it. He produced a large ceremonial key, clearly just for show, since the library had modern locks now, and handed it to Margaret. Miss Thornbury, as the curator of the Holloway collection and the person who protected these treasures through considerable personal sacrifice, would you do the honors? Margaret took the key with trembling hands, tears visible in her eyes. Thank you, Mayor Chun, and thank you to everyone who believed in this vision. She turned to face the crowd. My great-great-grandfather used to say that the best investment you can make is in something that will outlive you. This center is that investment. It will teach and help people long after all of us are gone. That's the true meaning of infinite wealth-creating value that compounds across generations. She turned the ceremonial key in the lock, which didn't actually do anything, but made for a good photo, and Fred and Velma opened the large double doors. The crowd cheered and began filing into the library, eager to explore the new center. Inside, volunteers and staff members guided visitors through different areas. Children gravitated toward an interactive exhibit called the Lemonade Stand Challenge, which taught basic business principles through a fun simulation. Teenagers clustered around computer stations featuring Mystery Inc.'s newly launched YouTube series, Mystery Economics, where Velma explained financial concepts through solved cases. Adults attended a presentation in the main reading room about practical budgeting strategies. But the biggest attraction was the vault exhibition. Visitors descended the stairs in small groups to see where Holloway's materials had been hidden and to view carefully curated displays of his original writings. One exhibit showed his journal entry about the 3 foundations of wealth. Another displayed letters from people he'd helped, And the third featured modern success stories from people who followed his principles, proof that the wisdom worked across any era. Daphne found herself giving an impromptu tour to a group of middle school students whose teacher had brought them for a field trip. So, he was basically hiding homework. One skeptical boy asked, looking at Holloway's displayed journals. "That's the big treasure?" Daphne smiled. "I thought the same thing at first. But think about it this way. If someone gave you $1 million right now, what would you do with it?" "Buy a mansion," one girl said immediately. "Video games." Another student shouted. "A car," said a third. "Okay, but what happens after you buy all that stuff?" Studies show that most lottery winners, people who suddenly get millions of dollars, end up broke within 5 years. Why? Because they never learned how to manage money. They just spent it until it was gone. The students looked thoughtful. Now imagine if instead of giving you $1 million, someone gave you the knowledge to earn, save, and invest money wisely. Which gift would be more valuable in the long run? The knowledge, the skeptical boy admitted reluctantly, because you could use it to make your own millions, and you'd know how to keep them. Exactly. That's what Holloway understood. He didn't hide gold coins. He hid something worth infinitely more. And the best part? Unlike money, knowledge doesn't run out when you share it. If I teach you something, you still have it, and I still have it. We both win. That's actually pretty cool, the girl who'd wanted a mansion said. So what's the most important thing he taught? Daphne thought for a moment. Honestly, the most important thing is that you have more control over your financial future than you think. You don't have to be rich already, or super smart, or lucky. You just have to make consistent, smart decisions and have patience. Save a little regularly, learn continuously, avoid obvious scams, and give time a chance to work its magic through compound growth. That's the secret. That's it? Another student asked, sounding disappointed. That's the big secret to infinite wealth. I know, it sounds too simple, right? But simple doesn't mean easy. It's like staying healthy. Everyone knows you should eat right and exercise, but most people don't do it consistently. Financial health is the same. The principles are simple, but following them requires discipline and patience. That's why education matters. The more you understand why these principles work, the more motivated you'll be to actually follow them. The teacher, who had been listening, spoke up. "Thank you for that explanation, young lady. I wish I'd learned these principles when I was my student's age. I made a lot of expensive mistakes because nobody taught me better. That's exactly why this center exists," Daphne said warmly. "So your students won't have to make those same mistakes. They'll have access to knowledge that previous generations didn't get easily." As the group moved on to explore other exhibits, Daphne spotted someone unexpected standing near the entrance to the vault. Dr. Patricia Montgomery, dressed simply and holding a visitor badge. She was reading one of Holloway's displayed letters with intense focus, tears streaming down her face. Daphne approached cautiously. "Dr. Montgomery? I didn't expect to see you here." Montgomery looked up, quickly wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know I probably shouldn't have come. I just ... I needed to see this. To see what I almost destroyed with my greed and stupidity." "You didn't destroy it," Daphne said gently. "You made mistakes, yes, but the center exists now. Holloway's wisdom is being shared. That's what matters." "I spent 20 years studying Augustus Holloway," Montgomery said, her voice thick with emotion. "I wrote books about his theories, lectured about his strategies, claimed to be an expert on his life. But I never understood the most important thing about him, that he measured success not by what he accumulated, but by what he gave away and how he helped others. I was so focused on my own academic prestige that I completely missed the point of everything he taught." She gestured at the exhibition around them. "This is what I should have been working toward all along. Not another best-selling book with my name on it, but actual education and outreach It helps real people. And I was willing to steal and lie to prevent it. I'm so ashamed. Holloway believed in second chances, Daphne reminded her. He gave loans to people who'd made terrible financial mistakes. He taught people who'd been scammed or bankrupted. He believed people could learn and change. Don't you think you deserve the same grace? Montgomery met her eyes. I don't know if I deserve it, but I want to earn it. That's why I'm here. I wanted to ask Margaret and you and Mystery Inc. if there might be any way I could contribute to this center. Not for credit or recognition, not for my career. Just to do something good with whatever knowledge I actually do have. Before Daphne could respond, Margaret appeared at her elbow. I thought I saw you come in, Patricia. Montgomery tensed, clearly expecting hostility. I'm sorry, I should have asked permission. I'll leave. Actually, Margaret interrupted. I was hoping you'd come. I have something I wanted to discuss with you. She pulled out a folder. We're developing an advanced economics curriculum for graduate students and adult learners. It requires someone with serious academic credentials and deep knowledge of economic theory. Someone who, despite making terrible mistakes, genuinely understands Holloway's work at a scholarly level. Someone who has experienced firsthand the consequences of letting ambition override integrity and can teach others to avoid that trap. She held out the folder. It's a volunteer position, obviously. No salary, no book deals, no fame. Just teaching. Would you be interested? Montgomery stared at the folder like it was a life preserver thrown to a drowning person. You trust me to teach here? After everything? Holloway believed that the best teachers are often people who've made mistakes and learned from them, Margaret said. Besides, everyone deserves a chance at redemption. But Patricia, this is your only chance. If you betray this trust or try to use this position for personal gain, it's over. No more chances. Understood? Understood, Montgomery whispered, taking the folder with shaking hands. Thank you. Thank you so much. I won't let you down. As Montgomery walked away, clutching the folder like sacred scripture, Daphne turned to Margaret with admiration. That was very generous of you. Margaret shrugged. Augustus would have done the same. Besides, holding grudges is expensive, costs you peace of mind, and doesn't benefit anyone. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is a surprisingly good investment. It frees you up to focus on productive things, rather than dwelling on the past. Another economic principle? Daphne asked with a smile. Everything's an economic principle, if you think about it right, Margaret replied with a wink. They walked back upstairs to find the main hall absolutely packed with people. Every reading nook was occupied, every computer station was in use, and multiple presentations were happening in different rooms. The energy was electric, the kind of buzz that happens when people are genuinely excited about learning. Fred found them and pulled them aside to where the rest of Mystery Inc. was gathered. Guys, have you seen the numbers? Over 800 people came today. The YouTube channel has gained 50,000 subscribers since launch. And get this, we've already received $75,000 in private donations, including a $25,000 contribution from an anonymous donor. Jinkies, Velma exclaimed. That's incredible. And, Fred continued with a grin, the city council just approved expanding the program. They want to create satellite centers in 3 other neighborhoods and develop a mobile literacy unit that can travel to schools. This is really happening. Does this mean we're successful entrepreneurs now? Shaggy asked. Because I gotta say, it's way more stressful than I thought it would be. Rutsch Rescher, Scooby agreed. But it's good pressure, Daphne said, watching the happy crowds flowing through the library. This is what Augustus Holloway dreamed of. People from all backgrounds learning together, improving their lives, passing knowledge to the next generation. We're not just solving a mystery anymore. We're building something that matters. Velma pulled up something on her tablet. Speaking of which, I've been tracking social media mentions of the center and Holloway's principles. Look at this. She showed them a thread where people were sharing their own financial success stories inspired by the Mystery Inc. videos and Holloway's wisdom. I started saving 10% of every paycheck like Holloway suggested. In just 6 months, I have an emergency fund for the first time in my life. The peace of mind is incredible. My teenager watched the Mystery Economics videos and came to me with questions about investing. We opened a custodial brokerage account together. She's so excited about learning, and I'm learning alongside her. I almost fell for a get-rich-quick scheme. But then I remembered Holloway's rule. Never invest in what you don't understand. I asked more questions, did research, and realized it was a scam. Saved myself $5,000. This is amazing, Daphne breathed. People are actually changing their behavior. We're making a real difference, and it's compounding, Velma noted. Each person who learns teaches others, family members, friends, colleagues. The impact multiplies exponentially, just like compound interest itself. Mayor Chun approached the group, beaming. Mystery Inc. I wanted to personally thank you. The city expected maybe 200 people for opening day. We got 4 times that. The media coverage has been overwhelmingly positive. I've already received calls from mayors in 3 other cities asking how they can create similar programs. You've started something that could spread nationwide. That's what Holloway wanted, Fred said. Financial literacy for everyone, not just the privileged few. If we can help that spread, we'll have honored his legacy better than any treasure hunt ever could. As the afternoon wore on and the opening ceremony transitioned into ongoing operations, Daphne found herself back in the vault exhibition, standing in front of the infinite wealth primer behind its protective glass. She reread the opening passage, the one that had changed her understanding of what wealth really meant. Wealth is not something you find. It is something you create through knowledge, discipline, and consistent action over time.